been busy.
So thank you for taking your time to come out and see us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
All right, so we're here with Erin Nordstrom.
Nordstrom, yeah,
with
like the
Ed-
store. None of the money, but the cool name.
That's awesome. So she's with Edge Home Financing.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have a few questions for her, and yeah, we're just gonna talk about it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna give a couple scenarios of if we're trying to buy a home.
Okay.
But first, it starts with where do we go first? So we're starting the process of looking for a home and want to know who we're working with. Could you tell us a little about yourself and how you got into mortgage lending?
Absolutely. So I've been doing mortgage lending for about 3 years, 4 years. It'll be 4 years next month, actually. Wow, the days go quick. I did actually credit restoration for about 10 years in a previous life, and I've always done like sales type jobs, but I ended up calling a friend. I was looking at potentially getting my real estate license actually, and I called a friend who was dual licensed in both mortgages and real estate. And it was really during the time when interest rates were super duper low and he was completely slammed with refinances. So he said, don't get your realtor license, come get your mortgage license, be my processor, I'll train you. And he had like 25 years experience. So I said, okay. And I went and I studied my butt off because the exam's not easy. And I got my broker's license. And he trained me for 3 years on being a processor, which has been such a blessing to me because I learned the back end first. I learned what documents need to go into a file to be able to get an approval. I learned what needs to happen if there's issues that come up. So we can foresee and look at a file up front and make sure that we're catching those obstacles ahead of time before we get into a loan and find out it's time to close and we can't close now. So having that experience up front just made me way better broker. And then as I progressed and learned, I started to do the front end of things, and with my sales background, it just made sense to become a mortgage broker. So I moved on island a couple years ago and got my license here and started meeting with a lot of the big players here on island trying to decide where to hang my license, and found that there's a lot of different type of lending on island. But there wasn't a lot of wholesale brokerage, which is what I had been doing. So I met with several different banks. I met with a lot of the big players here that had very established businesses, but it just didn't feel like the right fit for me because with wholesale lending, I get to shop lenders. I get to make sure that I'm getting the best pricing. I get to make sure that my borrowers are saving money, and sometimes able to put people in homes that couldn't get into a home otherwise. So I ended up finding Edge. They were able to house my license. They're licensed in almost every state. It allows me to work as an independent broker, and then I can shop lenders and make sure that I'm delivering the best loans for my clients.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I love your story.
Yeah.
So great.
I have a question for most of the buyers. They're afraid, which I'm included in that. It's always one of the biggest purchases of your life.
It is
So
a huge, stressful, big decision.
right.
Yeah.
So what would you say about what's happening now with the market? We're in August 2024.
Yeah.
That would make people a little bit more comfortable with moving forward.
So we are seeing interest rates that have been dropping recently, and they're talking about dropping again. But we haven't seen a huge shift in them dropping significantly yet. But the good news with that is when rates drop, prices are going to go up. That's just the way that it works. That's the way that the market works. So we're still in that kind of sweet spot right now where you can come in, you can do a little bit better on your pricing, buy your home at a good rate because they've come down, and then you're just stuck in your mortgage for a 6-month period. After that 6 months, you can refinance, and you can refinance every 6 months as it makes sense financially. So it's really a time right now where I recommend to people to get pre-qualified, get pre-approved, and look at buying if they want to buy in the near future, because it's kind of that sweet time where you're going to be able to capitalize on the best of both worlds. You're going to be able to capitalize on the best pricing, and you're going to be able to capitalize on the fact that if interest rates drop, we'll be able to refinance and save more money. So
That's great.
yeah.
Maybe you should ask say the pre-approved and pre-qualified questions
Yeah.
that came up.
So we've heard terms like pre-qualified or pre-approval, but aren't sure what the difference are and how they affect our ability to make an offer. What's the difference between being a pre-qualified and pre-approved?
So pre-qualified is where we are going to just sit down. We're going to talk the basics. We're going to just find out the details of, where do you think your credit is? What do you want your payment to be in? What is your current employment situation? That type of thing. But we're not actually going to go through and check your documents. So when someone calls to get pre-qualified, we're just kind of running through the basics to see, is this something that is worth pursuing and moving forward into? When you're going to actually start making offers on a house, you want to be pre-approved, which means we want to be able to check your assets. We want to be able to check your income. We want to make sure that when you go under contract for that home, you're pre-approved, you can qualify for that mortgage. And so you're not making offers that you can't follow through with, or you're not putting down payments or earnest money deposits or something like that to find out you're not even approved. So when you are just initially thinking, I want to see where I'm at, go ahead and get pre-qualified. It's a good way to kind of get the steps in place of what you'll need to do. But when you're really to get serious about it and you're ready to go shopping and look for homes, then you're going to want to go through a full pre-approval process.
Awesome. So then now that we're on to the loan process, could you briefly describe the loan process from start to finish?
Sure.
Let me just make sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I just don't want to waste time for now.
Yeah.
And maybe Okay, so thank you for giving us that information on the pre-qual and pre-approved. Now, as a first-time home buyer, people don't know where to go or how the process works. Could you briefly describe the loan process from the beginning to the end?
Absolutely. So first off, we would have you, the very first step I have all of my borrowers do is to go to the Equifax opt-out pre-screen. The reason I do that is because when you start shopping for a mortgage, you can end up on solicitation lists, which makes your life a nightmare. And so I send all of my buyers there so that they can opt out. Basically what you're doing is you're opting out from those approved high interest credit card offers like we get from Capital One in the mail that nobody wants anyway, but they just annoy you, but they call all the time. So that process takes 5 days, but if anything, it just helps improve your credit because you're not going to be getting all those offers, so you're lower risk. So I send everyone there. That's the first step, and I emphasize that to the 10th degree because I don't want anyone calling me saying, "Oh my God, Erin, I've had 30 calls. It's miserable." So everyone goes there. Then I send the link out to my application. I need everyone to fill that out. That's gathering basic information. That's going to be your date of birth, your social security number, your most recent 2 years of employment history, your most recent 2 years of housing history, answers if you're a first-time home buyer, some credit questions, that type of thing. So we'll gather that information, you'll fill out that application, and along with that, I'll send a list of documentation that we will need to be able to verify the information on that application is accurate. This is stuff that the underwriter is going to need. This is stuff that the lender is going to need. And that list is going to vary. It just depends on your individual situation. For pre-approval, I usually do a soft pull on the credit and not a hard pull. I wait until somebody is under actual contract to do a hard pull on their credit because I don't want anybody getting hit with a bunch of inquiries. Those can also negatively impact your credit. So we do a soft pull for a pre-approval. You get under contract, you filled out the application, you've submitted all the documents. We get it submitted, we contact lenders, figure out where we are going to get the best loan, where we're going to get you the best rates, where we're going to be able to save you the most amount of money. And that process takes, a day or so because I do shop lenders and I want to make sure we're going to the right one and getting the best program. Then we'll get it submitted. You will get disclosures from the lender that would kind of go through the loan estimate, details of the transaction and the loan. You'll sign all of those. We submit your documents that you have supplied to us into underwriting, and then we wait for the initial loan approval. When the initial loan approval comes through, typically they will give us a list of conditions, conditional loan approval. That will be additional documents or questions that they may have. And that's going to vary. That's going to depend on each individual person, what they're going to need. And this is where my experience as a processor and a pre-underwriter has been very helpful, because a lot of times I can review the application and know these are the questions that are going to come up, so we can ask that up front. But if not, we get the list and then we contact the buyer and let them know that we need these documents. We partner with the underwriting team to make sure that they're getting everything that they need, and we order an appraisal. The appraisal gets scheduled through the seller agent. That takes place, and then we just make sure that we are getting the checklist of every single item that is needed to get the loan through. So keeping constant communication with the realtors, who are constantly having to set up different appointments and walkthroughs, and making sure everyone has all of the right documentation, that it's a smooth transaction, and then working with title to make sure that we are scheduled for closing and able to get everybody to sign on time and record it and get your keys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful explanation. As a first-time home buyer, is there any certain programs or that might help make the purchase more affordable?
Absolutely. First-time home buyers, and you can qualify as a first-time home buyer if you haven't owned a home in 2 years. So people who maybe sold their home and then rented can come back as a first-time home buyer. They have programs available where you can do between 3 and 3.5% down. There's also down payment assistance programs that serve as a second mortgage that would cover your down payment. So there are different programs out there for first-time home buyers that help you to be able to get into a home affordably without having a bunch of money in savings.
Awesome. Number 5.
I think we kind of covered this one and the others, like when they're fearful. Maybe we can run through again just quickly, because the other one might not be that good.
People nervous about reaching out. They get skeptical.
Okay, yeah.
So we know that sometimes first-time home buyers get a bit skeptical of reaching out and starting their process, because it could be a bit intimidating. You got to dig through your finances and job history and things like that. So what would you say to people like that feel a bit uneasy about that?
I actually had those come up this weekend, actually. I had somebody who filled out an application for me, had to submit some of the documents, and was like, I'm kind of back and forth if I want to buy right now. I said, great, no problem. My recommendation is, let's still get you pre-approved. Let's still look at your credit. Let's still look at your situation, because it may not be today. It might be a 6-month or a 9-month or a year or 5-year goal to get there. But if you have the steps and you know where you're at, you know how to get to where you're going. And that way we're able to really make sure we're putting people in the best position to buy, so that when they're ready, it's really to level up their life, not make their life more stressful. It's a huge, huge purchase. It's a big deal to buy a home. It's changed my life dramatically, owning a home, selling a home, the equity, all of that. And so I just think education is power and knowledge is power. And so it's just about making sure that we're looking at the pieces of the puzzle and coming up with a game plan. And it, like I said, it might not be today. It might be a year from now. It might be 5 years from now. But if you don't even know where you're at or how to get there, it just makes it hard to plan for your goals.
That's why I think you're so great, because you want to help people. It's not just a right now thing. It's something you want to help people get prepared for 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Where some people want that business right away, but you help prepare for the future.
I honestly don't do this. I mean, yes, it supplies me with an income for my family. It is a career, it's a job, but I don't look at commissions. I don't do this for the money. I don't do this so that I can be like, this house is $1 million or this house is $5 million. It's not about that for me. Honestly, for me, it's about helping people to better their lives. And so, and that's, when I come with it from that energy, I just feel like I live in a flow and a good state, and it's an abundant life. And so I just try and help as many people as I can, and I give them options. It's their life, it's their money. They have to decide what's right for them. And honestly, like, nobody can know that but yourself. So it's just like, I'm here to help. Here's how I can help. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Awesome. All right, so local lending versus mainland lending.
Good.
What are the benefits of working with a local lender versus a mainland lender?
So, unfortunately, I've learned the hard way about local lending. There's little things on this island. You know, the way that the taxes are done are different than the way they're done on the mainland. Appraisals have been a huge thing. Knowing what lenders use local appraisers has been night and day difference. Because if you get an appraisal from somebody who doesn't understand our island, they don't understand that you can have $1 million home next to an empty plot of land, next to a coffee farm with miles of land before you can get another comp. Like, they don't get that, and their parameters are that you have to have an appraisal within like a certain amount of mileage, it can totally kill these. So knowing the ins and outs of Hawaii and knowing the ins and outs of the laws here, and even reporting with the county is different here than it is in other states. It's just really beneficial. The other nice thing is getting to know the people that you're working with. You know, it's fun to go out to dinner. I went out to dinner last week with a couple that I helped get a home from Florida that just moved here. And honestly, like, I moved here a couple years ago, and being able to come here and hang out with even my realtor and just feeling like I had a friend and I wasn't alone, it just makes a big difference. So I think it's just building that relationship, building trust. There's a lot to be said for the aloha spirit. And then I think it's just knowing like the quirks and the ins and outs of island life versus mainland life. It's just different.
So we know the Big Island has some unique characteristics, like you said. We're curious if there are any special considerations that would affect the lending process, and what are those things that the buyer can be aware of?
So there are different things that we have to be mindful of, like lava zones. That's a big thing here in Hawaii, right? A lot of lenders won't lend in any lava zone 2. Some of them, most of them won't lend in lava zone 1 at all. And it's just knowing what type of insurances that you need to get for those different properties in lava zones. The other thing I mentioned, was appraisals. That's been a big thing for me and something that I've worked through a few times. Leaseholds versus, leasehold sales, that's different. Condo-tels are something you deal with a lot here. Needing hurricane insurance, just different things like that fall into play living on island. And a lot of it is just a learning curve and working through the problems, but being able to have people who are flexible and want to work together and realize that we're all on the same team, and sometimes things come up, but we just work through it and we keep moving forward, and we just make sure that we are hitting our deadlines and that everybody's getting into their home.
Awesome.
Great.
So another question back to kind of the qualifying scenario. What is the biggest hurdle or roadblock that prevents people from qualifying for a home loan?
I would say probably employment or work history. So you need to have been working within the same field or attending school for the last 2 years. So if you're bouncing jobs around a lot, that can be super challenging. Credit score, if your credit score is low. Now, these are all things that you can fix. These are all things that we can do something about if we know, and there can be plans in place to get you there. But it's just knowing what these situations are. I would also recommend, not going out and applying for a bunch of credit right before you're getting ready to go buy a home. Those types of things create red flags for lenders, and they get challenging. But it's so individual that as we pre-qualify and we look at each individual situation and their documents and their employment history and their living history and all of the things, we can really put together a plan that puts somebody in the best position when they're ready to buy.
Okay, that kind of answers the next question. Like, in case we encounter any challenges during the pre-qual process, we'd like to know how you've helped others overcome similar hurdles, or how you've provided solutions to buyers who have hit hurdles in their pre-qual process.
One of the nice things about being a mortgage broker is I have access to communities where mortgage brokers work together. So if anything weird comes up, we can go onto a forum and say, here's the situation, and brokers dive in and help each other through them. So it's really nice. And so, being part of that community, I feel like really does benefit me in being able to help people overcome hurdles, and being able to work with people who have 20 to 30 years experience and reach out and say, what about this, what about that? And then also being able to leverage the fact that I have over 117 lenders. If we need to, and I've had to, move loans from one lender to another, either because of an issue or because financially it just made more sense for my client and it was going to save them money if we moved and started over, so we did. So it's just, being able to roll with the punches and being able to do what needs to be done to get the loan done.
Awesome.
I kind of wanted to ask something else that's not on our plan, but for people that are like, two things that I think comes up a lot, the job, the not being in the job for longer than 2 years, that's pretty common. And then I think self-employed people and people that have like a car payment or something like that. Do you have any recommendations for those types?
So self-employed, you would need to be self-employed for 2 years, same situation there. There are different options that we can look at for self-employed borrowers. So we can, the big obstacle I see with self-employed borrowers is if your accountant is excellent, you are paying low amount of taxes because you have a lot of write-offs, right? So then you go and you're ready to qualify for a mortgage, and the mortgage company looks at your tax return, and they're like, you don't make any money, and so they don't want to lend you any money. But there's other programs out there. There's bank statement loans out there. There's asset depletion loans out there. So there's other options out there. If you've been in business for more than 5 years self-employed, they only go off 1 year tax returns instead of 2. We can usually run it for 1 or 2 years, see what financially makes more sense. And then the other thing I would recommend is if you know you're going to buy, let your accountant know, hey, I'm going to buy a house next year. So thank you, you do a great job, but I need to look like I made more money this year, so let's not deduct as much, right? But just because, you don't think you're in a situation to buy, doesn't mean you're not. That's why I say always, let's have a conversation. Let's look at it. It's no pressure. It's your money. It's your life. It's your choice. But that way we can at least look at it and if I were to buy, would it cost me more? Would it save me money? That way you're building equity versus paying for somebody else to build equity.
Yeah, that's great. Any tips for people that have car payments? And I'm asking for a friend.
For a friend? It just depends on what your car payment is. There are some times when I'll look at people's credit and I'll say, look, if we include that you pay these debts off, it would actually end up saving you X amount of money per month. Would be better. Or it just kind of depends. If you have less than 6 months left on your car payment, we can exclude it from your debt to income ratio. So that's helpful and nice. But yeah, I mean, if you have a car payment, you have a car payment. If somebody else pays your car payment and you don't pay it, and we can show that somebody else has paid it for the last 12 months, then we can exclude it from your debt to income ratio. So there's some things that we can do depending on the individual situation, but we would want to look at it on a case-by-case basis in your individual situation and see what makes sense. Having a big car payment doesn't necessarily disqualify you from being able to qualify for a mortgage. It just depends on what your income is and what your other debts are and where your debt to income ratio falls. But there's always a good way to look at the numbers and say, if you paid off these 3 credit cards, it offsets that amount of money and you can afford it. So it's the whole picture versus just the individual thing.
So don't count yourself out of the home buying if you don't look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's the whole picture, which is the biggest thing I run into, and the biggest challenge as a broker that I get is I get realtors that call me all the time and say, what are your rates?
Yeah.
What are your rates? What are my rates based on what? Because it's so individualized. I can't just say these are what my rates are. I can give you a ballpark, but it's going to be a ballpark, right? Because it's going to depend on your credit score. It's going to depend on your debt to income ratio. It's going to depend on the loan to value of the home. It's going to depend on the county you're buying.
If there's HOA.
If there's HOA. Like, there's so many factors that are playing into this. And so
Right.
that's why we just really need to look at it, talk about it, and come up with a plan.
So besides a car payment, let's go back to credit cards. Do they go off of the minimum monthly payment
Yes.
as part of your
Yep.
loan amount rather than the big picture of how much debt you're
So debt to income ratio is based off of your outgoing monthly payments. So what they do is they take your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes, HOA, and insurance, right? So that's that's all of your housing costs. And then they take your minimum payments of all of your debts, right? And so that is where and then they will divide that out based off of what you make per month of your income. So, and then you need to, I think maybe we'll talk about this later, I don't know, it might come up, but usually they look at your all overall debts and it needs to be under 50% of whatever your monthly is kind of how it figures out. So, which is why it's good for a lot of people because they can, a lot of people pay off their credit cards every month. You know, so if we pull their credit, it shows a balance, but they pay them every month. So if we show it a zero balance, we can exclude them. Or, you know, we can go in and be like, look, if you paid off like these $3,000 in credit cards, that would reduce your interest rate by this amount and save you X amount on your mortgage. So, but that's so individualized that there's no way to give an answer until you actually take the time and look at each person's big picture in a will.
So could you give us an explanation of, say you are trying to qualify for a home for $1 million and you have this 50% debt to income ratio. What number would you be looking at? I guess just a broad example of what number you're looking to be looking at, how much income you have to have to qualify, or is that just too broad of a question?
It's too broad. Yeah,
okay.
You can even do it
Okay.
because it would depend, right? So we would need to know a few different things. So how much money are you looking to put down, right? So now we've got to consider your loan to value into that. We need to know what your credit score is. We need to know what your income is. So say your debt to income falls within that range, but you still have to qualify to be able to pay for that mortgage. So your debt to income could be under 50%, but if you're only bringing in, $3,000 a month, you're not going to qualify. So that's why it really is so individualized, and it's really challenging even in like a just like, hey, what about this scenario type situation to give a straight up answer, because it is so dependent on each person's individual situation.
Got it. So I guess this would be part of that question as well. If people are trying to get a sense of how much they might be able to borrow, is there like a easy formula to kind of go off of to estimate what they could possibly qualify for?
I mean, yes and no, right? Under
Yeah,
the 50%,
yeah.
but it just is going to depend. And a lot of people don't even know what their minimum payments are on all their credit or what is even on their credit. So my recommendation would be just to call me. Like, let's just look at it.
Call Erin.
Yeah, I can tell you. I will look at it. I will tell you and, give you an idea, and you'll at least know. And then you'd be like, oh, do I get a second job or save for a bigger down payment or buy something with an Ohana so I can offset part of my mortgage by renting that out?
Yeah.
Which is very common here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that because I actually looked at some properties, and that was one of the things that came up. Was like you can use the rental from the additional living space or whatever you're doing to offset that cost. So can you give us an example of when a situation that you used that and how it made it better and easier?
Absolutely. So you can do that. A lot of homes here in Hawaii have Ohanas on them. And what we do is we would just get a rental appraisal along with a normal appraisal. So that would tell us approximately what you could rent that property for. And then they will allow you to count that towards your income with buying. So, and that happens a lot, with people buying investment properties as well. You can qualify for a mortgage based off of the income you are going to bring in by owning that property. So we'll get a normal appraisal, we get the rental schedule appraisal, and then based off of those, if the numbers work out, you can qualify for the mortgage, not using your normal income, but just the income that property will bring.
Does it have to be a separate living area to qualify, or could be a bedroom? Let's say I'm buying a house with 5 bedrooms. I only need 2.
It has to be a separate living
Okay.
situation, yeah. But if it was like a basement apartment or something like that,
Okay.
where you have like a lease and like a separate living quarter, then you'd be fine.
Okay. Very good to know. So we know there's been a lot of things on the media about the current interest rates, and people are getting excited, and we kind of wanted to hit that and talk about that a little bit. Why is now a really good time to buy?
I'm recommending to people I work with to buy now because interest rates have come down a little, but they haven't dropped a ton. We are anticipating that they will probably come down again, but the good news is because rates haven't dropped significantly, prices haven't skyrocketed yet. When rates come down, prices will go up. We'll find ourselves in more bidding wars, and people will be paying a lot more money for the homes. So right now it's that sweet spot because you can get in there, you can put in a good offer on a home, be able to buy at a good market rate, and then 6 months from now we can look at doing a refinance as rates drop and save you money. So it's kind of a win-win situation right now where people are waiting until rates drop. They're going to end up paying more money. It's not in the long run, right? Buying a home is a long-term process. Usually it's a 30-year mortgage. It's a long-term plan. And so in the big picture of things, it just makes more sense to get into it now where pricing is still good and then refinance. So for example, when I sold my house, about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when rates were really low, I ended up getting over $25,000 more than my asking price because we got in a bidding war. And I was in a situation where I could. And so I did. Which was great for me as a seller, but it's not great as a buyer, right? And so it's kind of, right now is the time where I strongly recommend people get out there and buy those homes where they can really capitalize on the good pricing, and then we'll just watch rates. And when it makes sense and it's going to save you $100 or more a month on your payment, we can refinance every 6 months as needed.
Awesome.
And then as far as refinancing, I know there's a lot of people that don't quite understand the process of that. What does that mean, like in numbers? Like if you're refinancing, the rate is going to be lower, but does that mean you're starting over?
No. So basically when you go through and you do a refinance, the lender is paying off your old mortgage. So we would get your mortgage statement, find out what your mortgage is. They are going to pay that off, and then you would actually essentially you skip a payment because of the way that the interest works, and then the next month you would start making the new payment to the new lender.
Right.
So it's minimal documentation, basic things, and if I've done your mortgage, I've got your documentation, so you don't even have to do another application. I'm ready to roll. But if you haven't done your mortgage, you're going to fill out an application, you're going to submit the minimal documentation that we need. Refinances are quick. They only take, for me, a week to 2 weeks to do. It's a super quick, pretty painless process. So nothing like buying a home. I mean, buying a home isn't a painful process. It can be a little bit stressful, but it's a lot more documentation in purchasing than a refinance. It's a lot quicker.
And when is a good time to refi? Let's say I bought my house and it was at 8% when I got it, and now it's down to 6.9. I'm just shooting numbers. What's a significant drop that would make sense for me to refi?
Honestly, if you're going down even a point, it's going to save you enough to make it worth it. If you bought your house at 8%, you should be calling me now. It'd be a good time to start looking at refinancing. You need to wait at least 6 months from when you initiated your mortgage, but as long as it's been at least 6 months, you can refinance every 6 months. Honestly, that's something that I take care of for my clients. Is I'm monitoring their interest rates and I'm watching it so that when it's time to refinance, I'm reaching out and letting them know, like, hey, it's time, let's get it done. So you don't have to worry about it because nobody has time to have to what's interest rates today and what was my interest rate when I closed? Like, no one has time to do that. So that's something that I make sure that I'm doing for my clients.
That kind of leads into a question I think we missed from earlier. Your communication speed, I would say, because sometimes as realtors we have to submit an offer, and even if we get into bidding wars and things like that, we need things quick. what can we expect working with you as far as getting things moving as fast as possible?
Well, I work 24/7, so I don't have to work an 8 to 5. So you guys know how it is.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, I don't want to work an 8 to 5 in an office, so I traded that in for 24/7. So you can pretty much always reach me. I've got a trip coming up actually in a few weeks, and people are like, "Are you taking time off?" No, I'm not. I am a mortgage broker because I can work anywhere I have internet, which is why I choose the career that I choose. Other than I like to help people, right? So it offers that flexibility, but I get it. I'm working when you're working. So if you text me or call me or reach out to me, I'm going to get back to you right away. I'm going to answer your call. I think that's honestly what's made me the most successful on this island is that I do answer my phone. And if I don't have an answer, I'll just tell you. Like, I have to find this out tomorrow, or I'll have to get you back the information because I'm not going to just make up things that I don't know. But then you can set proper expectations, right? So, since I was like 15, I've done customer service sales type jobs. I have no patience or tolerance for bad customer service at all. And so it's something that I pride myself very much in, is just making sure that I provide that high level of service. And so I just try to make sure that, I'm communicating and getting back to people. I also have hired a full-time assistant, a processor. So if I'm not available, she's available. And her and I are in constant communication. So you shouldn't ever really need for anything. The other thing that's weird about me is when I moved on island, I never changed from my mainland hours working in Utah. So you can catch me pretty much at 4 a.m. until probably 8 or 9 at night. And then I sleep about 5 hours a day. So yeah, pretty much if you need me, you can find me. You can find me.
Really, like 24/7.
I literally do. I pretty much do. But it's just easier to make sure everybody has the information they need and nobody's stressed out. Like, I've bought a house, I've sold a house. It's a stressful process for people, and it's a lot of money that we're talking about. And so I just feel like if we can just make sure everybody knows what's happening and we're communicating, it just makes it a better experience.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today and answering all these questions. I know it's a lot, but I feel like hopefully it's helping a lot of people. I know it's helping us.
Yeah.
We just have a fun little thing we like to do, speed round for questions, just to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
So what's your favorite local dish?
I'd say poke, but I can only eat about 4 or 5 bites of it, and then my brain kicks in that I'm eating raw fish, and I get this weird visualization of like a fish, and I can't eat it after that, but I love it. So if you put it like on nachos or something where I have multiple textures, I don't know, it's weird, but I love it. And I eat like 4 or 5 bites, and then I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Where's your favorite spot to get it?
The poke shop.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome.
How do you drink your Kona coffee?
I drink a lot of cold brew, actually. It was kind of funny because my sister-in-law moved on island before me, and when I'd come visit her, she always drank cold brew. And so when I moved on island, I guess I just associated Hawaii with cold brew, and I just quit drinking hot coffee. So I drink a lot of cold brew, little coffee, a lot of cream.
Nice.
Yeah.
And please tell us one funny or silly or unexpected thing about you, like a weird talent that you have.
Well, I clogged for years as a kid, but the funniest thing about me is I'm unembarrassable. So I wake up in the morning, and if I look in the mirror and it makes me laugh, I grab my camera before I grab my hairbrush, and I snap a picture and I throw it on my social media. Because I just feel like everyone needs to laugh more. I've posted videos of me dancing, clogging, like whatever. I'm always myself. I don't know, like I can't do fake. I don't know how. I wish I did, because it would come in handy sometimes. But I just learned years ago that I'm not good at it, and so I'm just me all the time. And which is a good or a bad thing.
I love it.
But yeah, it's just what you see is what you get, and I'm pretty much an open book, and I just show up as me, and people love me or they hate me, but it is what it is.
Love it.
What's your favorite spot in Kona or Waikoloa, somewhere on the island to watch the sunset? Do you have
Oh, I love sunset. I don't know that I have a favorite spot because the sun moves like every year, or I mean every season or every month, right? So I would say I probably either go to Honnold's or Old-A's the most, just because it's the closest to my house. But I love to like, I don't know, I like will go to Kua or like wherever, like I follow the sun. More important is when I get there is I have to scope out the perfect spot to sit, because my fans need me to take a picture or 30 to post on the internet. So my family's always like, we get there to the beach and they're like, where do you want to sit, Mom? And they just kind of sit back and like watch until I decide and scoop it out. And then I literally probably take, like my whole phone is full of pictures of sunrise and sunset. And then I'm always like, it never does it justice, right? It's never good enough, but
and it's never the same, right?
No.
It's always a different sunset.
Yeah, I know, I love it. Like the sky gives us that for free, like every day. So lucky.
And this is not a green screen, just so you guys know. It's real.
This is real.
We're ahoy hoy right now.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite? So you got sunset, sunrise, and do you have a favorite beach just to be at?
I mean, Maklavena, of course. If we're going with the family, we do a lot of Kua. Kua Bay. My daughter's birthday's this weekend, and we're gonna go to Kua Bay. That's what she wants to do.
Happy birthday.
And then when we get adventuresome, we'll drive up to like Kapuna or Beach 69. But I love them all. I mean, I'm still in that honeymoon phase of Hawaii, right? Where people ask me all the time, like, why did you move here? Literally, the sparkles on the ocean. That is literally why I moved here.
What's
The
the
sparkles.
Yes, this is why.
I feel like they all look like glitter, like little, like someone dumped glitter everywhere, and it's just magical. And when I came here to visit, my soul fell in love. And when I had to leave, I cried. And every time I came and visited, I cried when I leave. So I got obsessed, and I just wanted to buy a house anywhere. I didn't care, and I sent my husband like every house I could from one end of the island to the other until I finally got here. So I just hope that I never get to a place where I don't love every single part.
Oh, I love that story.
Thank you for sharing.
So
And
great.
I feel like, people are getting to know you as much as we are. And that's the thing about Hawaii. Like, you want to know who you're working with. And just getting to know people as people and not just emails and transactions and numbers. I think that's why.
Relationships
Yeah.
are so important.
And we'd love to work more with you, for sure.
Absolutely. That's what my favorite part about Hawaii, honestly, is the people. I haven't encountered anybody that hasn't been anything but super kind. Everyone's super kind, friendly. You walk down the street, they smile, they say good morning, they ask how you are. Locals, tourists, everything. So the aloha spirit is very rare. And it's just a beautiful thing to get to experience. So I feel very lucky, and thanks for having me. It was really good to spend time with
Thank
you
you
guys.
again, Erin. It was such a pleasure.
So fun.
Thank you.